What a movie. Am I right? The first thing I want to ask you is, why did, I'm anticipating an answer, which is a bad thing to do. Why did you shoot it on film? Why did you decide to shoot it on film?
That's the only thing I know how to shoot on. I've shot all 6 films on film, and we've used my same cinematographer. That's the top line answer. The truth is, I'm actually not a film purist. It's not like film or nothing. The truth is, you're just trying to represent the human experience, the way we observe the world. And I think film does that in a really beautiful way. And especially when you're shooting a period piece, I think it makes all of those layers, all those details, it kind of squishes them together and makes them all more believable. The truth is, I don't shoot film when it's moving at night. And I learned this on Midnight Special, just to make my point. When you're in a moving car at night, there's no way to shoot on film and have it represent the experience that we have when we're in a car at night, because you can't hold the exposure of the foreground and the background on film. It's just not built that way. So the scene in this, when Kathy's character is coming up over the bridge on the back of Benny's bike for the first time, and all the guys' bikes come up around them, that's digital, because there's no way to get the foreground and the background to look like it would to us. So therefore, that's why I say I'm not a film purist. There's certain instances where you're just trying to recreate an organic human experience. And 9 times out of 10, that happens on film.
I was thinking about it in one of the final scenes on that block where she lives. That if it was all in razor sharp focus, it wouldn't look right. It wouldn't evoke the period. It wouldn't give us that kind of not distance, but a filter.
Yeah.
Let's call it a filter.
Yeah. I mean, again, it takes all these different layers and it pushes them together. I think because digital photography is so crisp and so clean, you do see those edges, and it doesn't represent, certainly not how this period was photographed. But I think it doesn't really represent how we see the world. And so yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. I think I compare it to the reason I cast Michael Shannon is because he makes me look better. And film makes my stuff look better too. Especially, when you start talking about like my first film, Shotgun Stories or Take Shelter, it takes these rather mundane things and it makes them cinema. It certainly helps you pretty far down that road.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I used it for originally.
Let's talk about casting. How did you come upon the idea of Tom Hardy and Jodie Comer, 2 Brits?
Yeah, the British thing didn't scare me. I'd worked with 2 non-American actors in Loving, and that was a really specific choice because in Loving I had all of these examples of Richard and Mildred Loving, speaking. And they had a really unique accent. It was actually this kind of coastal Virginia accent from the time. And I just knew, having worked with Joel on Midnight Special, that he could do the voice work necessary to nail that accent. Ruth, in Loving, she just showed up with it built already in an audition. So I wasn't worried about that because I had all these audio examples of the real people who were interviewed for the Bikeriders, the book. And I knew I could give that to an actor who had the experience of dealing with, accent and voice, which obviously Jodie Comer did, and could build that accent to a T, which she did. I actually have that original audio, and it's insane the amount of work that she did. Tom's something different. Tom, I hadn't heard his voice until the first day that he used it, and we all were nervous. And he said his first line, and he came up to me and he was like, "What do you think? What do you think?" And kind of in that moment, I had to either take a stand and say, "No, let's retry, let's go another direction," or say, "Yes, let's keep moving down this path." And I did this math in my head really quickly. I knew the scene was coming where he would be watching Marlon Brando. I knew that his character was impersonating being the leader of this club, which is why he wanted to give it away so badly. He's really just this guy who lives in the suburbs with a house and a wife with 2 kids. So he's playing a part, and he's actually playing the part of Marlon Brando. And it gets a little meta when you're talking about Tom Hardy doing that. But it all made sense. It all laid down for me. And it kind of, it felt like more than just a voice. It felt like it actually supported the character. In terms of getting them, I mean, I'm just lucky. My casting director, Francine Maisler, who's the best in the business, on Midnight Special, there was an actor I was about to talk to, and I didn't know his work. And she called and was like, "Just get him to say yes. Just get him to say yes." And that was Adam Driver. And so she did that again with Jodie. I wasn't really familiar with her work, and she was like, "Just get her to say yes." And so when I spoke to her for the first time, the thing that struck me about Jodie, because you're just having a conversation with people, it was the way she spoke about Kathy. I think a lot of times when actors are playing characters that are maybe below their socioeconomic level or from a different world, they sometimes look down on them or judge them. And I didn't get that from Jodie at all. At that point, I had spoken to some other actresses, and I sometimes got that,
Mm-hmm.
that there was judgment there.
Mm-hmm.
And Jodie from the beginning just loved Kathy because I loved Kathy. Not just the Kathy in the book, but the Kathy that I wrote, because they're 2 different things. And the way she identified with her, I knew I would be in safe hands. And then it turned out she happens to be one of the best actors in the world. I got to see her play Prima Facie in the West End, and that's after I had cast her. I was passing through London and was there to meet Tom actually for the first time. And I went to see this one-woman show. She's on stage for an hour and 45 minutes. And it's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. And so walking out of that, I was like, oh, like this is the ace up my sleeve. Like just wait till Jodie shows up. Yeah. And then you've got Austin. And I cast Austin before Elvis came out. The trailer had come out, and I saw it and was like, oh, well, that's interesting. It looks like that guy's doing some work. And then I was out here. I don't live out here. And I was out here to meet a few actors. Because the truth is, if you write a 1960s motorcycle film, you're going to have a lot of male actors calling you. So we actually Austin was an incoming call. My producing partner, Brian Cavanaugh Jones, was like, you should really meet this guy. He's going to play Elvis. And I forget what hotel I was at, but they had a rooftop restaurant. So I walked downstairs to meet him. And this guy walks up, and he doesn't look like Elvis. He looks a lot like he does in the film with blonde hair. And he held out his hand. He said, "It's good to meet you, Mr. Nichols," which was weird. And I just immediately was struck by the fact that he was the most attractive person I'd ever met in my life. He really is. He's actually more attractive in person, and which is good for him. And obviously, I knew I had to cast, and that was before Jodie and Tom were cast. But I knew I had to cast a person that would attract these other 2 characters, so that the audience would never question the fact that these other 2 characters were investing so much and trying to put so much into this one character. So that was easy. That was an easy choice. I cast him on the spot.
Looks plus chops.
100%. I think that guy has gears we've yet to see. Because the truth is, his character, he doesn't have the most to do in this film. Like I really do want to work with him more and kind of dig in there and kind of find those gears. Because the truth is, in this, he's an empty vessel. I compare it to like an empty glass of water. These people are pouring things into him, and he can't hold them. He was not built for the aspirations of others, which is a difficult thing to ask a guy like Austin Butler to do because he's so damn charming. I remember at some point on set, I was like, no, you have to be emotionally unavailable in this scene. And he would smile and go like, okay, Jeff. I mean, like, stop smiling. That's what I'm talking about. You're just so damn good looking. Yeah. And then if you keep going, you know, Michael Shannon, Boyd Holbrook, Emory Cohen, Norman Reedus, Damon Harriman, like the actors, it was an embarrassment of riches. I could point the camera in any direction, and there was somebody doing something interesting. Mm-hmm. And that's just, you know, I'm just lucky.
You've never had to do so much, to include so much stunt work in any film that I can recall from your other films.
Yeah.
Talk about how do you plan to stage fight scenes? And there are a lot of them in this film.
Yeah.
And then also I want to ask about the riding scenes. What kind of camera rig did you have to use?
Yeah. The fight scenes are just like the riding scenes, are just like the dramatic scenes. I just dream all this stuff in my head before we get there. So it's really just about getting the shots laid out for everybody else. The issue with fight scenes and with riding scenes or stunt scenes is that it involves multiple departments. So usually those scenes, I'll storyboard some. Certainly the riding scenes I did. But the stunt scenes actually, I could just map it out for you right now, you know, because I just have it in my head. And fight scenes are actually pretty fun because you're just collecting puzzle pieces throughout the day, and you get this punch, and then you get it from over the shoulder, and you know, you just end up building it. And then you have actors like Tom that really get into it, and we had a great stunt coordinator, and Freddie Poole was the guy's name, and he just would help me kind of break down what was in my head. So the fight scenes, the fist fight scenes, they take time, but they're not that hard to do actually. The riding scenes were different. The biggest challenge for the riding scenes was that these were all period correct bikes, which means they were all from the mid-1960s and earlier. And it wasn't until the mid-1970s that the US government actually standardized where clutches and throttles and brakes all went on a bike. So all these bikes are set up differently. So even if you rode before, you might not know how to ride these bikes. And then the fact that there are no disc brakes, no snapback throttles. There was actually a night where Austin was going to turn around and he hit a patch of wet leaves and the bike went out from under him. And because the throttle wouldn't snap back, it just kept going and it just spun. And they weigh over 1,000 pounds. And so then you make it so that you're not going to have them in helmets. You're going to have them riding in a pack of 42, all at speed. It's incredibly dangerous. But we did it. And and so then we had to figure out how to photograph it. Obviously, you have the free riding scenes, which that was pretty straightforward. We just used an arm car for that stuff. But the stuff up close was what we spent a lot of time on. And I'd realized on Midnight Special, which we had every kind of car rig imaginable on Midnight Special, that when you're shooting a human being riding in a car, I honestly think the best, most organic representation of it is handheld camera. It's also the cheapest and easiest. And so we thought, well, let's do handheld camera, but on a motorcycle. But how do you get a frontal shot with a handheld camera? So we used a trike. We used a 3-wheel bike that had platforms on the side, and I mounted my handheld cameraman. He basically hung off the front of it, but the necessity of having Austin actually drive the bike and act. But he's that good. He could do both. And so, that's how we built those things. Again, it sounds really simple, but we spent a lot of time thinking about it. Just because we did mounts, we did all these different tests, and I just wanted it to feel natural on a bike. And that's the solution we came up with.
How far into your conversations with Austin and Tom did you ask them, have you ever ridden a motorcycle before?
Yeah, Austin lied. He's like, yeah, I've been on some bikes. That wasn't true. But he went off to do the Dune sequel, and apparently he couldn't tell the studio this, but at the end of every workday, he had a Harley waiting for him, and he just started riding around Budapest and trained and trained and trained, and so that by the time he showed up to us, he actually had some riding experience, and then we just had to get him up to speed on the period bikes. Tom rides. I knew that Tom rides, but even these bikes, they freaked him out. I won't ride them; they're terrifying. But and then we had some other guys who were they came to us really prepared on these bikes. Michael Shannon can't even drive a car, so he wasn't allowed on it. He wasn't really allowed near the motorcycles.
He has other skills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's not why you hire Mike. Yeah.
When you're preparing a screenplay, when you're working on a new project, is one of the first questions, where does Michael Shannon fit in this project?
Sadly, yes, it is.
Nothing sad about that.
No, yeah. Ask the financiers. I'll read books. Anytime I have an idea, it's Mike comes first. He always comes first.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Congratulations on this film.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everybody.